Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy the story. Remember to like and subscribe. And now the story.
Deep within a suburban enclave, where rows of neatly trimmed lawns and manicured gardens bordered the quiet streets, there existed a community governed by the iron grip of the Homeowners Association. It was a realm where conformity reigned supreme, and deviation from the established norms was met with swift and merciless reprisal. One fateful evening, as twilight cast long shadows over the tranquil neighborhood, the residents of Birchwood Lane found themselves ensnared in a predicament of their own making. It began innocuously enough, with Mrs. Hawthorne, a retired schoolteacher and longtime resident, returning home from an evening stroll to discover her front door stubbornly refusing her entry. Confusion turned to frustration as Mrs. Hawthorne jiggled the key in the lock, only to find it obstinately resistant to her efforts. Panic crept into her voice as she pounded on the door, calling out for assistance that seemed agonizingly out of reach. Unbeknownst to Mrs. Hawthorne, she was not alone in her plight. Across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, a young couple with two small children, found themselves similarly locked out of their home. Their attempts to coax the door open met with the same stubborn resistance, leaving them stranded on the doorstep with mounting apprehension. As the evening wore on, more and more residents fell victim to the inexplicable malfunction of their locks, transforming Birchwood Lane into a veritable ghost town haunted by the specter of inaccessible homes. Whispers of conspiracy and sabotage began to circulate among the beleaguered residents, fueled by the oppressive presence of the HOA and its draconian regulations. Rumors swirled of clandestine meetings and covert operations aimed at tightening the association's grip on the community, leaving no door unmarked by its insidious influence. With each passing hour, the tension in Birchwood Lane reached a fever pitch, as tempers flared and accusations flew like arrows in the darkness. Neighbors turned against neighbors in a desperate bid to assign blame and seek retribution for their collective misfortune. But amidst the chaos and confusion, a flicker of hope emerged in the form of Mrs. Henderson, an elderly widow with a penchant for picking locks and unraveling mysteries. Armed with nothing more than a set of slender tools and a steely resolve, Mrs. Henderson set out to unravel the enigma of Birchwood Lane's locked doors. With the skill of a seasoned detective, Mrs. Henderson methodically worked her way through the labyrinth of locks, uncovering a web of deception and deceit woven by the HOA in its relentless pursuit of control. Behind the facade of uniformity and order lay a tangled maze of corruption and manipulation, designed to keep the residents of Birchwood Lane firmly under its thumb. Mrs. Henderson was not one to be deterred by such obstacles. With dogged determination, she pressed on, following the trail of clues to its inevitable conclusion. And when at last she stood before the door of the HOA's headquarters, she knew that her moment of reckoning had arrived. With a deft twist of her tools, Mrs. Henderson breached the sanctum of the HOA, revealing the truth that lay hidden within its walls. Behind closed doors, the leaders of the association had conspired to manipulate the locks of Birchwood Lane, using their power to hold the residents hostage to their whims and desires. Justice, as it so often does, prevailed in the end. With the evidence of their wrongdoing laid bare for all to see, the leaders of the HOA were swiftly deposed, their reign of tyranny brought to an abrupt and ignominious end. With the dawn of a new day, Birchwood Lane emerged from the shadows of oppression, liberated from the shackles of its past. The locks that had once barred the residents from their homes now stood as symbols of resilience and defiance, reminders of the strength that lies within a community united in purpose and resolve. As the sun rose high in the sky, casting its warm embrace over the newly liberated neighborhood, the residents of Birchwood Lane gathered together in celebration of their hard-won victory. And though the scars of their ordeal would linger for some time to come, they knew that they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to safeguard the freedoms for which they had fought so valiantly. Willow Glen, at the heart of suburban tranquility, amid manicured lawns and neatly aligned houses, stood as a beacon of gated community living. Its allure was undeniable, promising a life of comfort and serenity to those who sought refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic facade lurked a shadowy presence that would soon cast its ominous grasp upon the unsuspecting homeowners. The HOA, entrusted with the maintenance and upkeep of Willow Glen, held dominion over its residents with an iron grip. Their authority extended beyond the mere enforcement of rules and regulations. It delved deep into the pockets of every homeowner, extracting exorbitant fees in the name of preserving the community's pristine image. For years, the residents of Willow Glen had begrudgingly agreed to the demands of the HOA, accepting their fate as mere pawns in a game of financial manipulation. However, their tolerance was soon put to the test when rumors began to circulate about a sudden surge in HOA fees. It started with whispers among neighbors, murmurs of disbelief at the astronomical figures appearing on their monthly statements. Homeowners found themselves grappling with fees that seemed to multiply overnight, leaving many struggling to make ends meet. The tranquility of Willow Glen was shattered by the clamor of discontent as residents banded together in protest against the unjust financial burden placed upon them. As tensions simmered within the community, it became apparent that the HOA was teetering on the brink of financial ruin. Mismanagement of funds had led to a catastrophic shortfall, plunging Willow Glen into a state of financial chaos. Residents were left reeling, their trust in the HOA shattered beyond repair. Amidst the turmoil, a beacon of hope emerged in the form of a grassroots movement spearheaded by a determined group of homeowners. United in their resolve to hold the HOA accountable, they embarked on a crusade to uncover the truth behind the financial fiasco that had befallen their community. Their journey was fraught with obstacles, as they navigated through a labyrinth of deceit and corruption within the ranks of the HOA. Yet, undeterred by the magnitude of the task before them, they pressed onward, driven by a shared desire to reclaim control of their destiny. Their efforts bore fruit as damning evidence of embezzlement and fraud came to light, exposing the true extent of the HOA's betrayal. With their backs against the wall, the HOA was forced to confront the consequences of their actions, as legal proceedings loomed on the horizon. In the wake of the scandal, a new era dawned upon Willow Glen, one defined by transparency and accountability. The residents, emboldened by their triumph over adversity, took decisive action to overhaul the governance of their community. A new leadership emerged, one that prioritized the interests of the homeowners above all else. The scars of the past would not easily be erased, though Willow Glen would eventually emerge from the darkness that had threatened to consume it. The wounds inflicted upon its residents would linger, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the dangers of unchecked power. In the end, the story of Willow Glen served as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. And though the road to redemption may have been long and arduous, it was through their shared struggle that the residents of Willow Glen forged bonds that would endure long after the shadows had lifted from their once peaceful streets. In the placid embrace of the suburban sprawl, where each blade of grass stood in obedient formation under the expansive dome of the sky, a dark undertow swirled beneath the surface of apparent tranquility. The Homeowners Association ruled with an iron fist, its reach extending far beyond the neatly lined streets and pastel-colored houses. Under the guise of safety and security, the HOA had implemented a pervasive surveillance network, a web of security cameras and neighborhood watch programs that ensnared the unsuspecting residents in its unyielding grip. At the helm of this surveillance state stood Mr. Alden, the imperious head of the HOA, a man with a penchant for control and manipulation. He had championed the installation of security cameras on every lamppost, every street corner, and even within the quaint birdhouses that adorned the neighborhood, promising the residents that they would be safe under the watchful gaze of the surveillance network. But behind his smooth words and reassuring smile lay a darker truth, one that would shatter the illusion of security that he had so carefully crafted. For the residents, the constant surveillance was a suffocating presence, a reminder that their every move was being watched and scrutinized by unseen eyes. They lived in a state of perpetual paranoia, their once peaceful existence tainted by the ever-present threat of intrusion and violation. Privacy became a distant memory, as the boundaries between public and private life blurred into a disconcerting haze of constant surveillance. Still, it wasn't just the loss of privacy that gnawed at the residents' souls. It was the realization that they had been deceived, betrayed by those they had entrusted with their safety. Incidents of privacy infringement and abuse of surveillance power became all too common, as the HOA used the surveillance network to spy on the residents and gather compromising information to maintain their stranglehold on power. Then came the revelation that would shake the very foundations of the community. It was discovered that the HOA had been colluding with burglars and thieves, using the surveillance network to identify potential targets and orchestrate heists with chilling precision. They had betrayed the very trust they had sworn to uphold, all for their own selfish gain. The residents were outraged, their simmering anger erupting into open rebellion against the tyrannical rule of the HOA. They demanded justice for their violated trust, for the countless lives that had been shattered by the insidious plot of those who had sworn to protect them. Only justice, it seemed, was elusive, as the HOA remained defiant in the face of mounting evidence against them. In the end, the residents were left with nothing but bitter disillusionment and shattered dreams. The HOA was disbanded, its members driven from the community in disgrace, but the scars of their betrayal would linger long after they were gone. The surveillance cameras were dismantled, their watchful gaze extinguished forever, but the damage had been done. As the rubble settled and the echoes of the rebellion faded into memory, the residents of the suburb emerged from the darkness battered and broken, their once idyllic community now a mere shadow of its former self. They had learned the hard way that power corrupts, and that those who wield it will stop at nothing to maintain their hold on it. And though the wounds inflicted by the HOA's reign of terror would never fully heal, they served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of remaining ever vigilant against those who would seek to exploit it for their own selfish ends.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.